From 1692 to 1693, the town of Salem, Massachusetts experienced a bizarre period of mass hysteria revolving around the belief that witches were infesting the community. Salem's reputation has become notorious worldwide for executing those individuals who were found guilty of witchcraft. And the reason many people still talk about this occurrence is because it highlights the impact mass hysteria can have, as well as the dangers of religious extremism, the ease of scapegoating marginalised people, and the fragility of justice. Today we're looking at the witch trials and asking, was this really about witchcraft, or about fear and who held power? Just a quick reminder before we get into it today, guys, please like and subscribe if you're enjoying my content. I post weekly videos on true crime, mysteries, and the paranormal, so if that sounds right up your street, then please join the community. Now let's get into it. Salem in 1692 was a small, deeply Puritan community. At this time, a witch was understood as someone who willingly agreed to serve the devil in opposition of Christianity. Salem village had formed its own church and appointed a controversial minister, and with changes to the colony's charter and leadership, skirmishes with French colonists, a smallpox epidemic and extreme weather, tensions were running high. In January of 1692, several young girls reported that unseen forces were affecting them, and the minister suspected witchcraft. The girls reported to experience fits as well as being bitten and pinched by unknown energies. And from here, accusations snowballed, with formal complaints being submitted by members of the community and warrants issued to arrest the first 3 suspects. And these suspects were all women. And these women were Tituba, a slave in the household of Reverend Samuel Parris, Sarah Good, a homeless beggar, and Sarah Osborne, an elderly, bedridden woman who hadn't attended church for over 3 years. Interrogations of the accused witches began in the Salem Village Meeting House on the 1st of March, and this public spectacle turned a local disturbance into a legal disaster. In the crowded meeting house, the afflicted girls had dramatic fits, claiming the accused spirits were attacking them. So even if the women just sat there watching in the room, their spirits were supposedly attacking the girls, and this was known as spectral evidence. The judges aggressively questioned the women, already assuming they were guilty, and although Good and Osborne both denied the charges, Tituba confessed. Her vivid stories of black dogs and the devil's book proved the witch conspiracy, and so all 3 women were jailed immediately, marking the official start of the witch trials. Due to Tituba's confession, hysteria exploded across Salem, and over the next 15 months, more than 200 women and men were accused of witchcraft. As a result of the trials, 25 people died. 19 of these were hung, 1 died being pressed to death, and at least 5 died in custody due to the disgusting conditions. But let's come away from witches just for a moment and look at mindset, and in particular, the culture of fear during this time. For Puritans, religion wasn't just a belief system. It was the only explanation available for a world they were told was infested with evil. The devil was real, and witchcraft was a legal contract with him, the award being Pious. Being a witch was both a religious sin and treason against God. Puritans held the belief that God had already chosen their fates, otherwise known as predestination, so any misfortune was seen as a sign that they were heading straight to hell. Collective guilt played a massive part in this, in that if the community tolerated a single sinner or witch, God would punish the entire village with smallpox, crop failure, or Native American attacks. Society relied on a strict hierarchy, and anything that broke this order, like a woman talking back or a slave acting out, it was the devil just stretching his legs. And with this all in mind, the possibility of witchcraft was the ultimate threat to the entire Puritan way of life, and the trials were therefore a desperate attempt to regain God's favour by purging anyone who didn't fit the social mould. So essentially, this fear wasn't irrational, it was a consuming desire to protect their own well-being. Now, fear is one thing, but when you've got powers in control, validating and enforcing these fears, they become a lot harder to challenge. The accusations of witchcraft often came from young girls and members of the community, but what gave them weight was who believed them. Puritan society saw the clergy as moral authorities and interpreters of God's will, so the accusations were only perceived through a fearful religious lens. Questioning them would be questioning your own faith or denying that evil exists. Local magistrates examined the accused and decided whether cases went to trial, and the court system often assumed the accused were already guilty. It wasn't a case of innocent until proven guilty, like today. The women and men accused really had no hope, as the testimony that their spirits were harming people required no physical evidence and was impossible to verify and therefore impossible to disprove. Once spectral evidence was accepted, that was it. What's more, if you denied being a witch, you could be seen as a liar, but if you confessed, you could avoid execution and accuse others. So the system became a self-sustaining fake news institution with accusations leading to more accusations. At this point, it wasn't just about what people were afraid of, it was about a system that was getting out of control and couldn't be stopped. So who in particular was targeted? I guess you won't be surprised to hear that the accusations didn't fall evenly across society. Certain people were far more likely to be accused. The first clear factor was gender. As I'm sure you already know, the majority of the guilty were women, and this reflects the beliefs of the time, of course, of women being more morally weak and susceptible to the devil's influence. It always stems back to Bloody Eve, don't it? Widowed women were especially vulnerable, having no husband to defend them and often living alone. And then you have less talked about groups, such as the socially vulnerable. These individuals could be poor, isolated, or dependent on others. Those who were already on the margins of society, you could argue, were a much easier target. Another notable factor that a lot of the accused shared was their non-conformist attitude. These are the ones who didn't follow the flock. They were the outspoken ones and often had disputes with their neighbours. So really, it just sounds like an easy way to get rid of that controversial woman next door who undermined societal norms. So if you ever find yourself stepping out of a time machine in 1692 in Salem, don't be unique and don't speak your mind. With all this being said, it does make you wonder whether it was all really about witchcraft at all. Yes, witchcraft was believed in. It was a real thing. But this alone doesn't explain what happened in Salem. If this truly was only about belief, so many factors don't make sense. The speed and the scale at which this grew is exponential. So many were accused in such a short amount of time, and it affected the entire community in one way or another, escalating faster than it could have been controlled. It's very clear that the targeted victims were a certain group of people, which tells you that gender and societal stereotypes were at play here, and the fact that so many were condemned to death without actual proof illustrates legal chaos and injustice. It can quite literally be summed up as fear creating the environment, authority giving that fear legitimacy, and power deciding who was guilty. And this wasn't just a belief spiralling out of control, it was a system taking advantage of and amplifying it. Given that the Salem witch trials took place in an entirely different world than we know of today, the patterns behind them are strikingly similar, and this is why they're still relevant. Moral panic is one example of this, highlighted most notably in the horrific 9/11 attacks. After the attacks in 2001, airport security grew more intense, more Americans became afraid of flying, and hate crimes based on Islamophobia increased. Media amplification is another mechanism that we share with those 17th century Puritans, only their version was word of mouth, and ours is plastered all over our devices. Information now spreads faster than ever, and stories gain momentum very quickly. And like Salem, once a narrative takes hold, it can be almost impossible to challenge. And this mixture of fear with information rapidly spreading has led to many to justify extreme actions that they normally wouldn't. In Salem, unverified claims led to severe consequences, just like they have today. So fear can change what feels reasonable. And this is why I love history so much, because it teaches us lessons over and over again. There is absolutely an argument that Salem wasn't just about witchcraft. It's about what can happen when fear and power go unchecked. The Salem witch trials were a brief but brutal series of events, and looking at them through this particular lens raises uncomfortable questions about what happens when fear outweighs the evidence. So, Do you think the trials were inevitable in a pious and fearful society? I'd love to know your thoughts on this. But as always, thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in my next one.